Imagine a global superpower achieving an unprecedented victory on a distant continent, not with tanks or troops, but with banknotes and blueprints. It's a paradox that defies conventional geopolitics. China won in Venezuela without firing a shot. How did a nation thousands of miles away, separated by oceans and cultures, secure such profound influence in a resource-rich South American country, reshaping its destiny without a single military intervention? This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It's a geopolitical chess match that has redefined modern power projection. For centuries, the concept of global dominance was inextricably linked to military might. Empires rose and fell on the strength of their armies and navies. Yet, in the early 21st century, we witnessed a paradigm shift, where economic prowess and strategic partnerships began to replace traditional military superiority as the primary tools of influence. China's ascent in Venezuela stands as a stark, compelling example of this new form of global power. It's a victory achieved through complex financial maneuvers, infrastructure development, and a carefully cultivated diplomatic relationship, all unfolding in a region historically considered the backyard of Western powers. The unexpected nature of this triumph forces us to reconsider what it truly means to be a global player in our interconnected world. To understand this remarkable story, we must first set the stage. Venezuela, a nation blessed with staggering natural wealth, sits atop the world's largest proven oil reserves. Its subterranean riches have, for generations, made it a coveted prize on the global energy market. Before China's deep involvement, Venezuela was already a significant player, its oil flowing to markets across the globe, a source of both immense potential and perennial geopolitical intrigue. This vast underground ocean of black gold was, and remains, the ultimate strategic commodity, a magnet for global attention and competition. Enter China, a nation with its own burgeoning global ambitions. As the world's most populous country and a rapidly industrializing economic engine, China's demand for resources, particularly energy, grew exponentially. This insatiable hunger for raw materials, coupled with a strategic vision for global connectivity, birthed initiatives like the Belt and Road. This ambitious infrastructure development and investment strategy, spanning Asia, Africa, and parts of Europe and Latin America, sought to secure resources, open new markets, and forge a network of allies. Venezuela, with its vast oil wealth, fit perfectly into this grand design. The early glimmers of this extraordinary partnership appeared in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Venezuela, under its new political leadership, sought to diversify its international relationships, looking beyond traditional Western partners. China, in turn, saw an opportunity to secure long-term energy supplies and expand its global footprint. It was a convergence of interests. Venezuela sought new avenues for development and investment, while China sought energy security and promising new markets for its burgeoning industries. Initial overtures blossomed into concrete agreements, laying the groundwork for a relationship that would soon redefine both nations. At the heart of China's engagement was an ingenious mechanism, the oil for loans deals. Beijing extended significant loans and credit lines to Venezuela, often in the tens of billions of dollars. The repayment for these massive financial injections wasn't in cash, but in crude oil, delivered directly to China. This symbiotic arrangement provided Venezuela with much-needed capital for development projects and social programs, while guaranteeing China a steady, long-term supply of energy. This financial lifeline became a critical artery connecting the two nations. Visually, this burgeoning connection manifested in bustling Chinese financial centers and sprawling port cities, where tankers laden with Venezuelan crude were unloaded daily. Simultaneously, in Venezuela, Chinese-funded projects began to transform the landscape, often adjacent to the very oil infrastructure that fueled the repayment scheme. A little-known fact that solidified this initial trust was an early agreement in the mid-2000s, where China committed to a multi-billion-dollar joint fund for infrastructure projects, a commitment that signaled Beijing's serious, long-term intent and paved the way for even deeper cooperation. The stage was set, and with Hugo Chavez at Venezuela's helm, the relationship with China accelerated dramatically. Chávez's populist and fiercely anti-US stance provided fertile ground for deeper ties with a global power seeking to challenge American hegemony. This ideological alignment wasn't just rhetoric, it was the catalyst for an unprecedented expansion of economic cooperation, a strategic partnership forged in the fires of geopolitical realignment. Venezuela, increasingly isolated by Western powers, found a willing and powerful ally in Beijing, eager to invest without the perceived ideological strings attached by the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank. The sheer scale of Chinese investment was staggering. Over the past 2 decades, estimates place Chinese loans and investments in Venezuela in the tens of billions of dollars, making China Venezuela's largest creditor and a critical economic lifeline. This wasn't merely about securing oil, it was a comprehensive economic embrace. While oil remained the cornerstone, China's involvement quickly diversified. Beyond crude, Chinese companies poured resources into Venezuela's crumbling infrastructure, constructing roads, railways, and vital housing projects. Technology transfer became another key pillar, with Chinese firms helping to modernize industries and even providing civilian technology. Although military equipment was part of the deals, it was primarily for internal security and defense, never signaling direct military confrontation, but rather a strengthening of capabilities that aligned with China's broader strategic interests. This influx of Chinese financial support became absolutely crucial for Venezuela's economy, especially as Western sanctions began to bite and internal mismanagement exacerbated existing economic woes. For a nation increasingly starved of foreign capital and facing international isolation, Chinese loans offered a vital, often sole source of liquidity. However, this reliance was a double-edged sword. While it propped up the government and funded social programs, it also deepened Venezuela's indebtedness and tied its economic fate ever more closely to Beijing's strategic purse strings. The long-term implications of such profound dependency would eventually become starkly apparent. China's geopolitical calculation extended far beyond simple access to oil. It was a long game, a deliberate strategy to challenge US influence in Latin America, a region historically considered America's backyard. By fostering strong ties with nations like Venezuela, China aimed to secure crucial votes in international forums, establish a global network of influence, and project its power as a benevolent alternative to Western models of development. This was about reshaping the global order, one strategic partnership at a time. Beijing's approach was often framed by the no-strings-attached narrative, a powerful counterpoint to the conditional lending typically offered by Western institutions. For the Venezuelan government, this was incredibly appealing. It meant sovereignty was ostensibly preserved, and internal policies were not subject to external review. However, the reality behind this perception was nuanced. While not imposing specific democratic reforms or human rights conditions, China's strings were economic. Guaranteed oil supplies, favorable terms for Chinese companies, and political alignment on key international issues. These were different strings, perhaps, but strings nonetheless. Visually, the impact was striking. Modern infrastructure projects, often gleaming and new, constructed with Chinese investment, stood in stark contrast to the often deteriorating older infrastructure across Venezuela. Abstract maps of trade routes vividly illustrate the new arteries of commerce, connecting South America directly to Asia, bypassing traditional Western routes. One particularly interesting and lesser-known example of this deep involvement was the construction of the Gran Misión Vivienda Venezuela housing project. Chinese companies, using Chinese materials and expertise, built tens of thousands of affordable homes, directly impacting the lives of ordinary Venezuelans and showcasing China's tangible contribution to the nation's development, further cementing its presence and influence. Under Nicolás Maduro's leadership, the relationship between China and Venezuela faced its most severe test. As Venezuela plunged deeper into an unprecedented economic collapse, marked by hyperinflation, widespread shortages, and a devastating humanitarian crisis, China found itself navigating a complex and increasingly volatile situation. Despite the deepening instability, China largely maintained its support for the embattled South American nation. Abandoning Venezuela would have meant not only a significant loss on its substantial investments, but also a strategic setback, signaling weakness and potentially ceding ground to rival powers. However, Beijing did become notably more cautious, scaling back new loan commitments and focusing more on securing repayments for existing debts, a clear indication that even China's deep pockets had limits when faced with such profound economic dysfunction. A crucial aspect of China's victory in Venezuela was its consistent diplomatic shielding. On the international stage, China frequently used its veto power and diplomatic weight within multilateral organizations to protect Venezuela from Western-led criticisms, sanctions, and attempts at regime change. This unwavering diplomatic support was invaluable to Caracas, offering a crucial lifeline against mounting international pressure and allowing the Maduro government to maintain a degree of legitimacy. This demonstrated that China's influence extended far beyond mere economic transactions. It encompassed a comprehensive geopolitical alliance. The central theme of China achieving profound influence without firing a single shot remains paramount. In an era often defined by military interventions and proxy wars, China's approach to Venezuela stands as a stark contrast. It represents a sophisticated, non-military model of power projection, where economic leverage, strategic partnerships, and diplomatic solidarity replace traditional warfare. This divergence from historical patterns of superpower intervention marks a significant shift in global geopolitics, offering a new blueprint for how nations can project their power and secure their interests abroad. However, this novel approach has not been without its detractors, igniting a fierce debate often framed as new colonialism or debt-trap diplomacy. Critics argue that China's seemingly benevolent loans and investments often lead to developing nations becoming overly reliant, effectively trading one form of dependency for another. The argument suggests that countries, burdened by massive debts to Beijing, are compelled to make concessions, whether in resource extraction rights, strategic port access, or diplomatic alignment. While China vehemently denies these accusations, portraying its engagement as mutually beneficial South-South cooperation, the Venezuelan experience offers a complex case study that fuels this ongoing global discussion, underscoring the nuanced and sometimes controversial nature of China's rise. The long-term implications of China's deep involvement in Venezuela are profound and far-reaching. It has fundamentally reshaped Venezuela's economic and political landscape, intertwining its fate with that of an Asian superpower. More broadly, it has significantly altered the geopolitical balance in Latin America, traditionally a region dominated by Western influence. China's success in establishing such a deep foothold demonstrates a viable alternative model of international engagement, one that prioritizes economic ties and diplomatic support over military might. This case study of China and Venezuela is not an isolated incident, but rather a potent blueprint for understanding a broader global trend. The model of power projection, leveraging economic might, forging strategic partnerships, and providing unwavering diplomatic support, is being replicated by China in numerous other parts of the world, from Africa to Southeast Asia. It compels us to consider the profound implications of this new form of global power. Is it a more peaceful, equitable alternative to traditional military intervention, fostering genuine development and cooperation? Or does it merely present new, more subtle forms of dependency and control, challenging existing power structures without fundamentally altering the dynamics of dominance? These are critical questions for the future of international relations in an increasingly multipolar world, demanding our thoughtful reflection.